Hello team and welcome back to Winners and Losers, the show we break down the latest and greatest Premier League action. The focus today is of course the Manchester derby. Joe already has his head in his hands. Joining me is of course Joseph Tomlinson. It's Dougie Critchley. Start with you, Joe. How are you feeling very briefly after that match then?
Obviously not great, mate. Obviously not great. Manchester City, extremely high-class team, just outclassed us in all areas of the pitch. I think we're going to talk about it, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going to get well into it. First, Diggs, how are you?
Yeah, very good, excited. Lots to talk about. 9 goals, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, is lots to talk about indeed. We're going to save Erling Haaland for the clip after this. We're going to do a separate feature on him because he was the main protagonist in this fixture, wasn't he? So let's focus on teams rather than individuals.
Yes.
Or team performances rather than individual performances for the time being. Joe, did we learn anything new about Manchester United today?
I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because I think in hindsight, maybe a few little bits, but I think going into the game, I was quite happy with the team selection. I thought he just selected the right 11. I thought the setup was going to be very similar to the Liverpool win, the Arsenal win, where we looked to absorb pressure, hit on the counter-attack. I was excited to see Rashford back fit because I thought that was the only real way we were going to be able to trouble them. In hindsight, you might say, what we learned is that the double pivot isn't good enough in those sort of games, and Casemiro's got to play in there. What we learned is that Martial needs to start up front. But these are all sort of hindsight picks, I think. I think before the game I was fine with the 11. Now, going forward, maybe it does give us the opportunity to see more of a Casemiro, because I think the accusation that Eric Ten Hag has been able to hit back at is to say, well, I can't play him because Scott McTominay's playing really well at the moment, and I don't want to disrupt that midfield pairing. Now, after a really poor performance from Scott McTominay, I think you'll expect to see Casemiro come into the team, so I think that's definitely a learning point. And I would imagine that Martial, now he's back fully fit, we revert almost back to what we saw at pre-season where he starts in that number 9 role, Antony on the right and Sancho on the left, who I thought was really, really poor today. That's maybe another learning for me. Yeah,
we'll definitely come on to Sancho in just a second. Dukes, anything new about the all-conquering Manchester City?
I mean, everyone knew the quality of Haaland and Foden and De Bruyne, so there's not much there, but I think it actually showed the depth in some of the other positions as well. I thought Akanji and Ake were really solid at the back.
Akanji, mate.
Brilliant. I think he started life in the Premier League really, really effectively and sort of a little bit unexpectedly in many ways because he had so many injuries at Dortmund in his last couple of years there. So I thought they were brilliant. I thought Sergio Gomez, when he came on, was brilliant as well, playing at left-back and in central midfield. A sort of relative unknown from Anderlecht, obviously came through at La Masia and then spent some time at Dortmund. But I just didn't know he had that technical ability, to be quite honest. And then I think Grealish, after a great performance against Wolves prior to the international break, has continued that as well. So loads of positives for Pep. Slightly disappointing maybe to concede those goals late on, but still 6-3, confident win.
Okay then, let's nominate some winners and losers then from this fixture, excluding Erling Haaland. Should we start with winners? Joseph, you've got to be positive about Manchester City. Sorry about that.
Yeah, obviously Phil Foden. Phil Foden looked absolutely awesome, didn't he? I think that connection with Erling Haaland, immediately obvious to see a hat-trick on the day, but just the way he floats in off that right-hand side and combines with Haaland in those tight spaces, it is a real joy to watch. I thought Ilkay Gundogan as well, being deployed in the base of a midfield 3, which is not his classic position, given that Rodri picked up an injury, or I guess it was an injury or some sort of illness, the reason he's not in the squad. So I would say Ilkay Gundogan playing in there, but obviously Phil Foden. And then I know we're going to talk about him in the next clip, but how do you stop Haaland at this stage? I'm sure we're going to come on to that in the next clip, but it's ridiculous.
Phil Foden, 5 goals already, just 8 starts, has never hit double figures in a season for Manchester City. After a performance like that, you wouldn't bet against it, would you? A winner from you then, Dukes, that's not Phil Foden.
I'm going to go a bit niche here. I think the only United player that can really hold their head high after that performance is probably Antony. I thought he was really, really good on that right-hand side, particularly in the second half. I think technically he's obviously brilliant. He probably doesn't have that sort of massive acceleration that we've seen in some Premier League wingers in the past. But his quality, his finish for that goal was excellent. Some of his touches, his ability to bring down the ball and bring others into play as well. Dalot probably wasn't his usual self on that right-hand side as well, but that relationship has shown signs that it
killed him, I think,
can improve.
Big time. Because he's super aggressive at the moment.
Yeah, and Malacia had probably his weakest game since coming into the side as well. But I thought Antony was very, solid.
He was very good, didn't let his head go down at any point throughout the game, remained positive, I think finished on 5 shots, which was more than anyone else in that Manchester United side, although Martial came on, was very effective with his 2 securing a brace. Let's move on to losers then, Tomlinson. Do you want to lead with Jadon Sancho or did you have someone else in mind?
I think the entire Manchester United defence could be thrown in there. I think they looked really, really poor. It was a real throwback to those sort of Brentford, Brighton results where they just looked unsure of their positions. It didn't help, obviously, when Varane went off injured. That's a
chaos
massive blow for
in the
Manchester
ensuing
United straight
5
away.
minutes, wasn't
I mean, we even saw it, and we said it when we were watching it, didn't we? That the resulting corner from that incident when Varane was off the pitch resulted in a Haaland goal. I think his calmness and ability on the ball really adds something. So I think the entire back line have to be thrown in there. Jadon Sancho, I thought, had one of his worst games in a United shirt today. He was miles off the pace, and what really shocked me from him and Rashford is, they know what this derby means to the fans, and I thought like their effort was lacking a little bit today. I don't know whether Marcus Rashford coming back from his injury was slightly unfit, wasn't match fit, but Sancho in the build-up to this has been really good for United over the last few weeks. So there's a lot of negatives from United's point of view. Obviously, they've shipped 6 goals, and Erik ten Hag, I'm sure, will be absolutely furious tomorrow.
Yeah, he's a bit of a ghost, wasn't he? Reminiscent of sort of those early days under Ralf Rangnick when it didn't look like he was assured of the position he was occupying on a pitch. Dukes, who's your loser then from this fixture?
I'd probably go with Christian Eriksen just because I didn't really see it coming. I thought he was really, really good for United so far this season. As Joe said many times, probably United's best player. Yeah. But his ability to, break the lines through his passes wasn't really happening for him today. He gave away the ball a lot. And that sort of midfield three with McTominay, Eriksen and Bruno in front of them just didn't really click at all today, and they were thoroughly outclassed. I'd also go a little bit niche and maybe say that City have shown that they can win quite comfortably without Ruben Dias. I think the year before last, his first year in the Premier League, he was one of the Premier League's best centre-backs, and over time, his sort of nailed-on starting space has been slowly eroded. But that's a bit of a niche one. It's definitely more of the negatives on United.
I could say Ronaldo as well, I think, is a potential loser here. We've seen, Rashford deployed semi-fit, you would say, probably in the number 9 role, obviously for a reason that we were looking to hit on the counter-attack, and that was the way United were going to try and play this game. But then we saw Martial come on first sub. That's Martial coming back from injury now, you would presume. He had 2 injuries at the start of the season, played every minute of pre-season and looked really effective. If Martial is now back fit and starts at 9, and Rashford is the backup at 9, we're now talking about Ronaldo being the third choice striker. I think that's a major, major problem. Yeah,
and I know that Martial finished with 2 goals, but for the best part of 5-10 minutes when he first came on, he did not look match fit at all, did he? He looked way off the pace. All right, then on that topic, how do Manchester United improve in the short term? Do you see Ten Hag making any drastic changes, Joe, for Everton away?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of reactionary people out there tonight, a lot of reactionary Manchester United fans. United fans need to stay calm. I think the club needs to stay calm, not panic too much. Yes, they've shipped 6 goals in the derby, and it is a humiliating result, but this is a process at Manchester United, and it's not going to happen overnight. There's going to be some lumps and bumps along the road. This is definitely one of the bigger bumps, but over the past month or so, there have been some real positives for United, so I'm sure there'll be some tweaks in that Everton game. I would imagine we're going to see Anthony Martial start in the number 9 role. I'd imagine Casemiro gets a run in midfield now, but I think United have just got to stay calm, trust the process. I don't want to have to just keep harping back to that, but Man City can do this to people on their day. They really can do this to people on their day. They're the best team in the world, and United have just got to stay calm because people will be saying some madness online right now. There'll be some ridiculous Manchester United fans trying to get some real clickbait nonsense out there. Stay calm and just, hold your ground.
I mean, on the subject of the process, we've seen Ten Hag already change his ways somewhat after a horrendous introduction to life in the Premier League. Started out as this ball-dominant side, like to build possession slowly from the back, bring teams onto them and try and use individual quality to break them down. And then we've seen them develop in recent weeks into effectively a counter-attacking side, reminiscent of their days under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. So the process has changed already, and I want to know your thoughts on that. And obviously, the most obvious change, let's say, is bringing in Casemiro. What have you made of his start to life at United as well, and do you think that is the solution, Dukes?
Yeah, I mean, firstly on the Ten Hag point, I think he had to do it. Obviously, pressure was massively building after those first 2 games. He had to get some results, and it suits those players, particularly those forward players. Rashford in behind, Martial in behind, that's one of their key strengths. And Anthony, has adapted, as we said earlier, pretty well to life at Man United. In terms of the Casemiro question, I think it's quite an interesting one because Scott McTominay, prior to this game, had been playing exceptionally well. So I'm kind of with Joe. I think it was the right call in terms of the starting 11 for this game. And Casemiro, in his cameos off the bench, I don't think has been very impressive. I think he's looked, quite poor often in games in terms of his touch, in terms of his awareness. And obviously it's going to be an adaptation going from that 3 system at Real Madrid, playing with 2 of the best midfielders of this generation in Modric and Kroos to playing alongside Eriksen in the Premier League and in big games as well. So I think that's been a potential issue for United going forward. Also, given his age and his contract and the amount of money he cost, they need to start making that signing work. And it is a difficult one going forward. I wonder whether in the bigger games they might play a Casemiro, McTominay and Eriksen rather than Bruno. I think they really struggled to get Bruno into the game today. I thought he was pretty anonymous.
Yeah.
So that is something they can maybe look for in the bigger games. But at the moment, I'm kind of with Joe. I wouldn't panic. I think 6-3 probably looks worse as a statement than in terms of what it means for their long-term future. I think it's just, as he says, a bad result in a long season.
Yeah, maybe a little bit disheartening at the moment as well that the most obvious change doesn't look like a clear-cut or emphatic solution as well. Like, how much better are Manchester United going to be just by swapping out Casemiro for McTominay in the short term? Big question marks remain because of the way he started, like you've said. But let's call time on that right there. We, of course, have Erling Haaland to talk about, who's coming up next. So stick around for that. Like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on if you're enjoying the new look winners and losers. And we'll see you shortly.